The Oklahoma City Thunder fall to the Dallas Mavericks in Dallas as SGA does not play. We did get an injury update on Chet Holmgren and more from this game.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're diving in here on Locked On Thunder to the Thunder's loss to Dallas. We're here in Dallas in the press conference room after we just wrapped up with both the Thunder press conferences after this loss. But before the game started, also in this room, we got some interesting news. So if you remember yesterday's show, we talked about how I asked Shai about his wrist, because during that Cavs game, he was wearing a wrist wrap. During the post-game press conference, he was wearing a wrist wrap. And he mentioned how he sustained an injury whenever he was falling to the floor in the midst of that Cleveland game, but he felt pretty good. And that trajectory kept up for most of Friday. On the second night of a back-to-back, though, it's always tricky. So Shai was not on the initial injury report at all. And then once he got to the arena, Mark described that once he got to the arena, he dealt with some soreness, is what Mark said, with that wrist. And then that's whenever they said, okay, we got to make you questionable for this game. And then ultimately, after he went through his pregame warmups, he was listed as out with a wrist sprain, his first missed game of the season. That clearly elevates everybody up the ladder of who has to have more responsibility. You're trying to replace a 30-point per game score through the aggregate of this roster, which is already depleted, right? There's no Chet Holmgren. There's no Isaiah Hartenstein. There's no AJ Mitchell. So it completely changed the complexity of this game that whenever Shai was not on the injury report, but Luka and Kyrie and Lively were for Dallas, the Vegas odds had this swung all the way up to an 11.5 spread in Oklahoma City's favor in some places, including FanDuel. And then it got kind of pushed back down immediately to 2.5 whenever SGA went out. So that's the big swing in points that SGA provided on the betting market. We know what he provides on the actual hardwood, and it totally changed the game. That looked to be one where you could really manage it. You could really get past it, even with all the injuries, because of what happened, to Dallas's roster, obviously, and quickly turned into something else entirely. In addition to that, while we were also sitting in this room waiting for the press conferences to begin, the Thunder did issue an injury update on Chet Holmgren. And this update sounds like everything is going according to plan. So if you remember, when he initially got hurt on November 10th, the Thunder announced that they would update us on his return to play protocol in 8 to 10 weeks. We're at that window. We're at that mark. And then they just released the update on that protocol today, which sounds like everything's right on track, honestly, to this point. So the Thunder said Chet Holmgren is continuing to progress in his return to play protocol, and he will be reevaluated in approximately 3 to 5 weeks. That 3 to 5 week mark, if it goes to the 5 end of that 3 to 5 week mark, would be right after right as the All-Star break is wrapping up. So that's exactly what we all kind of thought when Chet got hurt. As always, an important distinction here is this is a reevaluation date. This is not a guaranteed return window. This is just whenever they're going to say something, right? It could be great. It could be as expected. It could be whatever, right? So we don't really know anything yet, but the first benchmark seems to be a very good one for Chet Holmgren, just trying to read through the tea leaves. But with all that out of the way, the Thunder took on the Dallas Mavericks in the American Airlines Center today, and they got down 20 points. They let go of the rope a little bit in this contest. They got down 10 points in a hurry. They battled back in the second quarter. They got up about 7 points or so, and then by the end of the first half, they were down 20 points at intermission. This is a game that saw 8 lead changes in 10 ties because the Thunder, to their credit, kept battling back, not just battling back in that third quarter and chipping away, but taking the lead at the end of the third quarter. And then eventually the game swung back in Dallas's direction, because while the Thunder had their massive run, just like Dallas did, and even this game, it starts at a 10-0 Dallas run. OKC immediately retaliates with a 9-0 run of their own. So like this game was a game of runs throughout, but when Dallas was reeling after growing that 20-point lead, from that moment on, they had an answer for everything Oklahoma City was trying to do. And to their credit, they outperformed Oklahoma City on this night. They out-executed them. They were the more cohesive team all throughout the contest, and they were able to get the win. Hats off. Now, we can talk about the reasons why, right? Like, I don't think that there's any grand takeaways for either side to grab from this game, whether you're on the victorious side like Dallas is, or you're on the losing end like Oklahoma City is. These two teams are shells of themselves right now. Like Luka changes the entire equation. Lively changes the entire equation. We just saw what Dallas could do to the Thunder team whenever they have their two bigs. And the Thunder, of course, had no bigs tonight that were fully healthy. And then for the Thunder, you know what Shai is. He's the MVP of this league. And tonight further proves it, because their offense was dreadful without Shai there. He's really their only creator, like creator for others, creators for himself. Like, he's really their only creator consistently on the ball. The other guys are hit or miss, and like some guys are capable of it, right? Like J-Dub is capable of creating a shot for himself. It's just nowhere near the steady, consistent hand that SGA is. So again, to be clear, before we get into why it happened, the bottom line is it did happen, that the Mavericks were the better team tonight. They deserved to win tonight. They out-executed OKC. So for all the Mavericks fans from the Raccoon Squad, as Locked On Mavs calls them, that are here to gloat, congratulations. I mean, great win for Dallas. I mean, they really had to stop the bleeding after going on a losing streak, losing to New Orleans controversially. And again, I do believe that Dallas deserved to win this game. We can talk about the officials. You know, me personally, the thing I had an issue with the officials was I thought that they didn't really have control of this game, and that hurt both teams at times. But other than that, I thought that it was a evenly called game. It was a very physical game, but it was consistently physical, throughout. And there were some bad calls on really both sides. And it's sort of like the rule of objectivity, right? Like if you look on the Mavs fans' social medias, they are ripping the refs to shreds. If you look on the Thunder's side of social media, they're ripping the refs to shreds. Pretty much did a down the middle job. Now, you can say that you didn't like how physical they let the game get, and like your style of officiating would be differing from them, but I don't think that it had an impact on this game. I really don't. Just like, again, the rule of objectivity. If one side is saying you're way too negative and the other side is saying you're way too positive, you're probably just right down the middle with what you're saying. And this is a game that I don't think the refs had an influence on. I think the injuries had a bigger part for both sides. Like no Shai, no Chet, no Hartenstein, no Luka, no Lively. Those are two massive counters to what these two teams typically will be in their full state. For the Thunder specifically, though, why did they get down 20? Why did they lose this game? I want to preface all of this before we get into it in the next segment with congratulations to the Thunder. They fought very hard. They didn't give up down 20 when most teams on the second night of a back-to-back, without your top three, without three of your top 5 players on your roster, including your top guy on the roster, down 20 on the road, second night of back-to-back, would have just quit. The Thunder didn't quit, and they never do quit. So credit to them for that. But there were plenty of things that this Thunder team has to clean up, and we'll talk about that and what those are coming up. But first, I want to say right now, but good friends over at FanDuel, go check out FanDuel today, because FanDuel is awesome, and you're going to want to get involved this weekend, because from big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need, from live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website today and share your betting lines that you have this weekend with me. I'll see if we agree there. But for example, you can go and see the Commanders are massive underdogs in the playoffs. But if perhaps you only really like the NBA, no worries there. They still have NBA odds out right now for you to jump on, including the Wizards being 13.5-point underdogs in Golden State. Perhaps you like that line. Go check it out at FanDuel.com today. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Go there right now for $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LO Thunderpod. So why did the Thunder drop this game? Why did it look so bad? Hand up. I thought the Thunder would still win this game. The line got moved down to 2.5 in favor of OKC. My betting column on Thunder and SI still remained, picking the Thunder. They did not win. They really, waned down the stretch of this contest, and I just expected a little bit more. And that's where it comes in, the aspect of playing a cleaner game. It starts at the top with Jalen Williams, and he alluded to it throughout his post-game press conference. He's got to be better. Credit to him, as we preface this with, for in the second half, he turned it around. He had a much better second half than he did first half, but as a body of work, it was just not good enough. 4 for 8 from the free throw line is a massive deal in a game with this margin of error. The 6 turnovers was a massive deal. The Thunder in general, overly careless with the basketball. 15 turnovers, and you go back and look, how many of those turnovers happen by being too careless, by being too lackadaisical in the backcourt? I mean, you're not even trying to do anything but inbound the basketball, and you don't have that focus. You don't have that edge to just process what you're doing. I mean, they were throwing the ball left, right, and center. It was like the Bad News Bears out there. I mean, there's no excuse for that. No matter if you have Shai, don't have Shai, Chet, Hartenstein, fully healthy, you're playing the G Leaguers, whatever it is, like there's no excuse for simply messing up inbound passes and just giving it away. There's zero excuse for that. And the Thunder did that tonight and did that very consistently. It's just not good enough. And then for J-Dub specifically, 19 points on 31% shooting, 20% from 3, 50% at the free throw line, minus 12 in this game. He just wasn't there. He had a tall order, right? Replacing the number one option. And now with that number one option, as he talked about, you're facing different coverages. You're facing different assignments that are being placed on you because they no longer have to worry about SGA. Similarly to what we talked about with PJ Washington yesterday of as you slide somebody up the scouting report, you could then be able to limit them, kind of turn that water off, as Mark would say. And PJ still had a really good game. I was impressed with his antics in his game, and we'll talk about that coming up. 16 points from him, 7 boards, 5 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, and he only missed a couple shots, and they were both from 3. But it was not this like backbreaker game that it typically is from PJ because he was slid up that scouting report, and you no longer could just see him getting wide open looks every time down the floor. He had to really work for it. And his credit, the work paid off. He still had a really good game, but it was not the PJ Washington game you're used to. So I say that to say this. Yes, J-Dub faced tougher defense in this game than he typically does. And he didn't have the Shai gravity. He didn't have the Shai setups. But his handle is extremely loose. His ability, because of that, to create for himself and others lacks behind. And it's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde situation where you saw in that first half, like, what did he do? 1 for 6 in that first half. Second half, what did he do? 6 for 16. Still not great. But in that third quarter, he was 3 for 6, shooting 50%. What was the difference in all those percentages? And the only percentage that looked clean was that third quarter. Tough shot making. And that is an art. That is a skill. If Shai doesn't hit as many tough shots as he hits, his percentages are not going to be as lofty as they are right now. But by the same token, you've got to balance that with not relying on the tough shots that whenever they go in, like that step back on Kleba, whenever they go in, like that shoulder bump, elbow fadeaway, they're electrifying. But when they get halfway home and rim out, you're kind of left with nothing. Whenever you would have, if you had a cleaner handle, if you had an ability to get downhill, with more speed, burst, and physicality, you have a higher percentage shot. You likely make that higher percentage shot, or get to the free throw line, which you couldn't convert there either, and help this offense. So J-Dub mentioned after the game, he has to be better. He knows that. Everybody knows that. And I will just say this too. This is why I don't think there's a ton of reaction to be had, because let's just be transparent. Like, if J-Dub is in this position in the most meaningful games of the season, then it changes the identity of this team, right? Like you're not going to have to rely on J-Dub to be the number one option. If you do, this is going to be the result. Pretty bad offense as a team because you lose all of what Shai gives you. That's why he's the MVP. Still, playing stout defense. Only scored 106 points to Dallas. And you're just kind of a team that's capable of winning, but has to fight a massive uphill battle. So to hold J-Dub to like a number one scoring option standard, I find it troubling to just come on here and like rip him a new one whenever this is not his intended role. I'm not so sure his intended role is the number 2 scoring option. And I think that we think of that because he has the ball a lot. Man, when Chet is in this lineup and he's taking, pick and pop shots and he's rolling to the rim and getting spoon-fed buckets heading toward the basket. Like when he's also getting the ball swung to him at the top of the key and spinning his way through the lane and finishing at the rim. Like all of those possessions stack on top of each other. Those shot attempts stack on top of each other, and they've got to come from somewhere to where at the end of the day, once this team is fully healthy and you start to see this team groove, whether it's this year or next year or whenever, the best version of the Thunder is probably with J-Dub as your number 3 option as a scorer, as a scoring attacker. So like that's why I have a hard time being overly critical of Jalen Williams' game. In this particular game, did he have to be better? Absolutely. For the long haul of his Thunder career, for the long haul of this Thunder season, this is not his design role. And we've talked ad nauseum about J-Dub this season, and I do think he's taken a little bit of a step back offensively. I think his defense has taken a massive leap to where he's an elite defender. Offensively, you would like to see him get to the rim more. You'd like to see him clean up his handle, and those things can create advantages for himself and others. Didn't see it tonight. Haven't seen it yet, but he's in year 3. We'll see where that lands. But again, it's not going to be held. He's not going to be held to this number 1 option standard that he just was not fit for tonight. And I don't know that he'll ever be fit for a number 1 scoring option on a team that has won as many games as the Thunder have to this point. But that's no indictment on J-Dub. I think that he's still capable of being a really, really, really good player. I think he's still capable of being an all-star this season, much less multiple time all-star. I think that he has that all-NBA kind of ceiling, but I do think it is more so of like a Brown Tatum thing, where it's like Tatum is clearly number 1, Shai's clearly number 1, and then if J-Dub progresses, you'll say J-Dub is clearly number 2. But what a number 2 to have! What another option to have for OKC. But tonight he just was not good enough. Lou Dort, I thought was really good. I thought he continued to hit big threes, 6 for 8 tonight, and they were timely threes for 18 points, 1 steal, and then we can tie this into the PJ Washington antics. I talked about it on OKC Dream Team, talked about it on this show, talked about it on Thunder on SI. The Thunder got punked last year, and I don't say that lightly. I think that they really did. I think that they know that they got punked last year because you look at the NBA Cup whenever they go back-to-back skirmishes, and what's the word that they're using themselves out of their own mouths? We don't want to be punked this year. We don't want to get punked. We're not going to get punked. To me, that's kind of like that's kind of just saying it out loud of what you felt you were last season, and they were by this very Dallas team. So to get into dust-ups with PJ Washington and Kyrie Irving, got into it Caruso a little bit verbally, I thought that was a good thing. I thought that was a good chippy attitude that this team did not have. Whenever you saw last year Isaiah Joe, hip checked into the 3rd row at the Paycom Center, and nobody cares. Nobody's rushing, jawing, getting in each other's faces. Like, it just didn't matter. And that they completely changed that today. And for that, I think that is a massive indicator of this team taking a step forward, of this team, moving past that inexperience and youth, and like knowing what it takes to set a tone, knowing what it takes to get to your ultimate goal. And for PJ, I get it. If you're a Thunder fan listening to this show, he's really annoying. Sure, I'll grant you that. But he's a role player. He's a bit player. What do bit players have to do? They can't go do what Shai does. They can't go do what Chet does. They can't go do what Luka does and Kyrie does. They've got to find their niche. They've got to find their thing. For some guys, it's shooting 60% from 3, right? Like 45% from 3, and you're just a knockdown shooter, and that's your niche. For some guys, you are a lockdown defender. You are the best guy in the league at shutting down stars. For PJ Washington, it's the mental game. It's getting in your head. It's pushing you to your limits. It's antagonizing you. It's baiting you into technical fouls. It's baiting you into frustration fouls. It's baiting you into being rushed, being up tempo of like, oh, he just made a big layup. I want to get down the floor in a hurry, and all of a sudden lost the basketball. All of a sudden threw a turnover, trying to get back at him for celebrating a layup. Like those things are his niche. And I don't say that as a criticism. I say that as a credit to him, because he's found a way to be an overall average player where he's a good defender. He's a streaky shooter. That's it. He puts all that together and it complements one another. And then you add in the electricity that he gives you, the electricity he gives his crowd, the energy he gives his bench. And all of a sudden, now you're talking about a fan favorite. You're talking about a guy that the team in Dallas rallies behind. You're talking about a guy who is capable of taking the other team out of their element. Now he goes from this, tiny role player to he's a really important part of this roster. So I get it. Is it frustrating whenever he's going to flex on your favorite player after he makes a layup? Sure. But I don't see how it can be, anything more than just that. It's his job. I mean, you talk about enforcers in hockey. That's kind of what he is in basketball. Like he's going to enforce the game, impose the game on the other team, and it's your job as the Thunder to not let that spill over. I think that the Thunder did a good job. I think that they did a good job as a roster of not backing away, not rolling over and showing PJ Washington their belly, but also not going fisticuffs and like getting everybody ejected in a game you're already shorthanded. Like they did a good job of walking that line and not letting it affect their play too terribly bad. So I get the PJ Washington stuff. I really do. What was the hit on J. Will dirty? I don't think so. I don't think it was dirty. I think it deserved the flagrant that it got. But again, there's a reason why it wasn't a flagrant too. I believe that was the right call. I think that what it was a guy who was overzealous. Did you really need to try to make that play in a January game? Probably not. Like if you're looking at NBA standards, but by the same token, we can't talk out of the same side of our mouths. Like everyone out there complaining about that foul on J. Will is probably the same people who say these guys just don't care anymore and none of this matters until the playoffs and they don't even try. He was trying to go make a play, and the purpose he was trying to go make a play for was because that J. Will had it going, man. He had it going in the second half. He was really a spark plug for bringing this team back. I mean, as much as everybody loves to criticize J. Will, he comes out in the second half, two offensive charges drawn, 2 threes hit, a dunk, and then he got the flagrant foul. Like he was the spark plug, and PJ after seeing J. Will dunk and have a really personal 6-0 run, like he wanted to try to shut that water off and do whatever it takes and recover in help after Dwight Powell for some reason went out and hard closed out on J. Will. He got beat. PJ saw it. PJ tried to recover. PJ made an aggressive play, and it just so happened that like J. was on the wrong end of it. I do believe it was a flagrant foul. I don't believe it was a dirty play. Same way that Dallas fans who are calling Lou Dort dirty. I don't think anything that Lou Dort did was dirty either. Like there was nothing dirty about this. This was good, clean fashion hate. This was good, clean old fashioned rivalry. This was a good, clean old fashioned physical basketball game. And we can't sit here Monday through Thursday and clamor for the days of old. And then when the days of old arrive, right, when the reckoning is here, when the rapture of early aughts basketball gets placed down here in Dallas, then all of a sudden lose our marbles about how clutching our pearls about how physical the game was. This is everything you wanted. And they delivered, and it was a fun game, and the Mavericks won. And the Mavericks got the better of OKC yet again. Now, we'll say, I don't think that this means anything. I don't think it means that the Thunder or Mavs, either one of them have an edge. So far in the season series, we've seen Dallas win a couple games here. We don't know. It could still be Dallas being the favorite if these two teams played again. We just don't know how they're going to match up when they're fully healthy, and that, to me, is the more interesting part, is trying to envision when both teams are 100%. What does this look like? And as a basketball fan, because like you guys are the Thunder fans, as a basketball fan, I would love to run this series back. If you're looking at this through a Thunder prism, there's nobody out west I'd rather not play if I was Oklahoma City than Dallas. Nobody. If I was Oklahoma City, I would sign on the dotted line right now that says you can throw any opponent at any round at any point in time against OKC except Dallas. That's how good I believe this Dallas team is when they're fully healthy. That's how much I think that they have this confidence about them, this edge about them against this specific Thunder team. Like they believe in themselves, and they just get this boost and this edge. This is the same Mavericks team that lost to the Pelicans, right? Like this is not. This is totally different whenever they play OKC. So I think that they're the biggest threat to the Thunder out west. I don't care about records. I don't care about seeding. Like they're the biggest threat to OKC in the West. But this is a bonus pod. That's pretty much all I got for you on today's show. We're back after the Brooklyn Nets game on Sunday. And then, of course, another full week of Locked On Thunder for you after that. So thank you so much for joining us on today's show. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.